was my ability to help my patients or my clients shift their perspective so they can actually they can see the possibilities that still exist in their life, regardless of whatever challenges they're facing. And figuring out those ways, how do we break that down and how do we make that happen? A lot of times people are setting goals that they think they're supposed to be setting because society tells them that that's what they want. And that is probably, in my opinion, the reason why most New Year's resolutions fail, because people are setting resolutions that they think they're supposed to be setting, but they don't necessarily really want. Hey guys, I'm Heather Moyse and I'm on Your Superior Self.
Heather, my friend,
Yeah.
new friend. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing well. I'm excited about this, right? Like this is a little bit exciting for me. I never had a gold medal finalist on the show. So thank you for taking the time.
Well, thanks for having me. This is a unique experience for me too, and I'm excited to have a conversation with you.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit of your background, right? Like so unique. Um, you're all about pushing boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Was that always the case growing up for you?
I would say it was the case when I was younger, just in terms of like the everyday bound, like things that people thought were, I don't know, too much for a little girl to be doing, climbing trees and climbing the ropes, faster than the guys and like doing all these things. And I just maybe just being a little more on the sporty side, but pushing those kinds of boundaries. But I also grew up in a really small town in the smallest province in Canada, like on an island off the east coast of Canada. And so to me, it was kind of just, I was excelling in sports growing up, but I also grew up in an academic family. And when you don't have people around you training for the Olympics or training to represent, your country in something, it's not that I ever actively said, oh, I could never do that. But it never occurred to me as an option. Like Olympians, they were TV people, not everyday normal people like I considered myself to be. So, I pursued a career and a master's degree in occupational therapy, and I never thought about sports as actually being a career until
Hmm.
someone kind of reeled me in and tried to recruit me for bobsledding. And at first I said no. I had no interest whatsoever of doing it, no interest of going to the Olympics and, whatever. And then 4 years later, ran into him again. And I was just like, fine, I'll just do the testing for this. And this was now, I'm 27, still had never lifted weights before, still had never taken sports seriously, but had played sports, growing up. And I went and did this testing and I ended up breaking one of their testing records. And the next Olympics were less than 5 months later. And so, when you do testing, it's kind of dry land testing, and you don't, I had never seen an actual bobsled before. I hadn't been down a track before because there's no ice on the track. But I fell in love with the challenge. Can I learn a new sport? Can I learn to do it well? And can I learn to do it well actually in time to represent my country at the next Olympics? So it had nothing to do with the sport itself, but it had everything to do with this challenge and this seemingly implausible challenge that was just like, as if, right, in less than 5 months, can I do all this and represent Canada? And it was, I think that I love my journey because of how unique it is. I didn't grow up, with that goal in mind and pursuing all of those things and coming around at 27 and kind of taking on this new goal and challenging the norms. Like a lot of athletes are retiring at 27, and here I am, taking on this challenge. And then I ended up kind of inadvertently getting pulled back into the next few Olympics. It was never my intention to be like, oh my gosh, I want to prove that I'm the best in the world and then prove it again and again and again. It was I ended up competing in 4 Olympic Games, and each of them just presented me with 4 very different, completely different challenges. And I just realized that I am fueled and motivated by challenges. And it's almost like the harder it seems or the more implausible it is, the more I just want to see how close I can get. So it's actually been able to part of my training as an occupational therapist, but also my experiences in dealing with these kinds of things has actually helped frame the way that I work with clients and the way that I help them kind of frame their own goals and how they perceive those things. And it's been a really, really great opportunity for me to use that experience and blend it in with what I do.
I mean, it's a great icebreaker,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's not the first thing I usually bring up, but
I mean, I feel like you should just wear the medals around, right? Like, I mean, that's
yeah.
pretty awesome. You have two
Yeah.
of
Set
them.
off all the metal detectors. Yeah.
Are you still practicing like occupational therapy now?
No. And actually some of my profs would say, and OTs would say, well, what you do, you technically are working as an occupational therapist, but I'm not registered. So I actually can't call myself an occupational therapist, but I use that training and my own personal experiences. So the coaching and mentoring I do is kind of blends in my education. But when I was doing occupational therapy, I was primarily focused on doing like neuro rehab, post-stroke, post-traumatic brain injury rehabilitation and stuff. So that was kind of where that focus was. And so it's a little bit different now, but the premise is all the same. Like what I loved about that profession as an occupational therapist was my ability to help my patients or my clients shift their perspective so they can actually they can see the possibilities that still exist in their life, regardless of whatever challenges they're facing. And figuring out those ways, how do we break that down and how do we make that happen for you? And I love doing that. I really do. And then it's also fun helping people figure out what goals they really want. A lot of times people are setting goals that they think they're supposed to be setting because society tells them that that's what they want. And that is probably, in my opinion, the reason why most New Year's resolutions fail, because people are setting resolutions that they think they're supposed to be setting, but they don't necessarily really want it. So, so I love kind of digging deep and figuring out why people want the things they want and helping them get the things that really add fulfillment to their life and not just getting to the next level for the sake of getting to the next level.
Sure. So helping them get past those maybe subconscious programming that are creating the boundaries for themselves and not really seeing how powerful they truly can be and going after the gold.
100%.
Right. And
Yeah.
dreaming big and
A
helping them
lot of it
achieve
is
that.
self-sabotage. So we do a lot of self-sabotage, and a lot of it is even just based on assumptions, based on self-limiting beliefs, based on fears, which is actually not even fear of failure. We're not actually afraid of failing. We're afraid of what people will say or what people will think. That's what we're afraid of. And it's not even whether we succeed or fail. It's sometimes we don't even pursue the things that we really want because we're afraid of what people will say or how we will be judged or how we will be looked at. And so that's the biggest thing that holds us back. And self-limiting beliefs, those are those stories that are rooted in us, kind of buried inside of us, stories that we were probably telling ourselves or that we were told when we were kids, and we just never kind of challenged that as we got older to prove that those might not be accurate anymore. Or might not be serving anymore. And assumptions, God, we assume way too many things. Like we just assume that person's going to say no. We assume they're taken. We assume that we're not qualified enough. We assume that so many people are going to be auditioning for this thing, so we don't even go. We assume that someone more qualified is going to show up. So like we stop ourselves before we even get started. And a lot of the goals that we set for ourselves, we think we're making these choices. We think we have so much autonomy, but we're actually limiting our choice options right from the beginning based on the boundaries of our direct environments and our direct exposures. And so those are the things we think are possible. We think we can become a doctor because one of our parents was a doctor. We think we can become an athlete potentially because one of our parents was an athlete. Like that's why I'd never even considered it till I was like reeled into it at 27. Because nobody in my environment was doing that. So I just, that's where I hope that I can stretch people's goals and make them look beyond those boundaries, like beyond those limitations that we set before we even get started. So
Sure. How do people self-sabotage? Like, how are you seeing it in your clients the most? Like, what's the commonality?
Oh my gosh, assumptions is a huge, huge thing. Like those three things that I was mentioning, assumptions, self-limiting beliefs, and the fear of the judgment of other people. Like those are the three main, like across the board, those are the biggest forms of self-sabotage. And I might even argue might be the foundations of all of the sabotage that we kind of create for ourselves. Um, it's if you just start thinking about, I mean, there's just one very simple example that I talk about quite often, and um it involves my mom. She came and told me that she and her dad added something to their bucket list, and I didn't know they had a bucket list, but I was curious. So she said that she and my dad decided to one day ring in the new year ballroom dancing in the Imperial Palace in Vienna. So apparently it's this big thing. It happens every year. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Like that's awesome. Are you going to do it this year? Oh no, we can't do it this year. Oh, why not? What are you doing? What are you doing this year for New Year's Eve? Oh, nothing. We don't have any plans this year, but we can't, it's too late. Mom, it's July. Like this conversation was all happening in July and she's saying it's too late. And I said, why do you think it's too late? I said, what do you mean? She goes, Heather, it's such a big deal. It would be sold out by now. Like it's, I said, are you sure? She goes, oh, Heather, it is like there's celebrities and royalty that go to this thing. Like it is a big deal. It happens every year. I said, Mom, but is it sold out? She goes, oh, I'm sure it would be. But did you check? And she was like, well, no. So I hop on my laptop and of course there's still tickets left. And I ask her, there are tickets, Mom. Do you want me to book a couple right now? And all of a sudden, so there's assumption number one is that it was too big that they would be sold out. Then she said, well, I think it would be more fun to go with another couple. And, I was single at the time, so it wasn't going to be me. But I said, why don't you go with your sister, like Aunt Roberta and Uncle Alex? They had traveled before, they had a great time. And she said, oh, they'd be perfect. They would be so much fun, but they won't be able to go this year because they're doing their big trip across the Northern Passage this year. And I said, oh, they're doing that over the Christmas holidays, like over the, holiday break. And she said, oh, no, they're doing that in September, but they're not going to want to do two big trips in one year. Assumption number two. So I said, Mom, are you sure? And she goes, just you call your aunt then. So I called my aunt and I just, basically explained the situation, and just also said that my mom didn't think it was really going to happen. But I thought I'd put it out there. And she just said, oh, well, I'll run it by you. I'll run it by your uncle, but tell your mom we'll give her a call back and let her know. So literally 10 minutes later, the phone rings and my Aunt Roberta calls and says that they're in. So they actually that year, that New Year's Eve, were in Vienna, ringing in the new year, ballroom dancing in this Imperial Palace in Vienna. But those two, I don't even know, there might have been a third assumption in there somewhere, but those two big assumptions, had they not been challenged, would have kiboshed that. Like it wouldn't even have started. They wouldn't even have looked. They would have assumed the tickets were sold out. They would have assumed someone else didn't want to go or wasn't able to go. And until you check and verify, then you aren't sure. You aren't sure, and you're sabotaging yourself before it even gets started. So part of what I work on with my clients is helping them learn how to challenge themselves, and to, as soon as they try and catch themselves in one of those assumption thoughts, to kind of stop them and actually check before they sell themselves short. Like that is my biggest purpose, is to have people, I just don't want people to sell themselves short. And that includes bringing the amount of fulfillment to their life that they deserve to have. And so I say fulfillment because fulfillment is different from exterior material success. It's actually the feeling of success. I think everyone deserves to feel successful in their lives. And that's what my goal is. So
helping
yeah.
others manifest their goals or their dreams, essentially,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
that's something we can achieve. But you have to, it seems like growing up, right? Like you had this concept of what you should be doing, right? Or what
Mm-hmm.
society has said you should be doing, right? And then
Yeah.
you made a left turn, like you went down the avenue of going to the Olympics and being
Mm-hmm.
like a stud athlete that wasn't really in your environment growing up. How did you, I mean, do you, looking back at it all, like, has it helped you find yourself?
I think it's helped me find my purpose, having that experience. I think by me I guess, coming to sports late in life, like as a career, and then now as a, full-time motivational speaker and, and coach and that sort of thing. I like, I know that what I'm doing now is I wasn't meant to be an athlete. I feel like that is what maybe my special gift that I was given, or that I, was born with, however people want to look at it. Kind of as a vessel to get me to what my purpose is, which is to empower other people by, helping them see the possibilities that exist, by my story not being the standard. Oh, I started training when I was 4, or I, started practicing and I was playing whatever, all the stuff growing up. And my goal was always to do this and to do whatever. I think I needed to be jolted out of autopilot. I needed to be kind of hauled out of the momentum of the path that I was on, which would have been a fine path, I'm sure, but it would not have offered me this opportunity to, one, discover what I'm actually capable of, but also what I'm capable of in terms of impacting and empowering other people. So I don't know if
what I
that
mean,
answers the
like, yeah,
question
no,
or
it,
not,
it
but
definitely answers part of it, right? But I mean, as far as like, the programming, seeing the programming early in your life, just with athletics, right? And
Mhm.
seeing that there was programs that were running there, and then going and challenging that and seeing like that come up in your, in your reality, and then conquering that right for yourself and pushing past those boundaries. But even now, as you like sit here as a professional speaker and you feel moments of success, do you ever question it and wonder like, what is it about success that we go after, right? Is it the programs that are telling us to go after success? Like, what is, like, I've been fascinated with finding the authentic self, just with a deeper dive in psychotherapy literature and theories of, you know, gestalt therapies, and what is the authentic self? Like, what is it really? Like, if we're all just, and just the sidebar of or athletics, right, is just one part of program that you see growing up, but like at a larger spectrum, there's all types of programs going on. Like, even society, it's like, you have to be this way to be a man, you have to be this way to be a woman, like, and
Mhm.
we're all subject to those thoughts and theories. But, and like, what is reality really, right? Like, what is it that, who are we as individuals? Like, I wonder if, like, you've spent some time, I'm sure, alone, right? Like, out in, what was it, Antarctica, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I
just,
wasn't alone in Antarctica, but
but you're there, right? And I'm sure you saw some amazing scenery, like,
Mhm.
questioning, like, what is it, right? What is our purpose, like, here in this reality of, like, is it experience, is it just, is it creation, is it manifesting our goals? Like, why are these goals, the way they are? Like, do you ever question any of that?
Yeah. I hate to admit that because I don't have an answer. Um,
Like, do you ever question the goals that you do have? Like, who are these really my goals? Or why do I have these goals? And like, is,
for
you know what I
you.
mean?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I question my goals. I question the goals of my clients for sure, to make sure that they're actually pursuing something that they really want to pursue, that's going to actually help their life and make them feel more fulfilled. But um, like I said earlier, because some of the goals we set are just like autopilot goals. They're the goals that we think we're supposed to be pursuing and living the life we're supposed to live, or and I probably am so adamant in challenging those because I realize I was in those molds growing up, and just, I fell into those. And so part of me was, well, why was I pursuing, that degree, or why did I automatically go to university? Like, why, how do we get onto this autopilot path, and how do we make sure that it's what we really want to do? So having, probably because of my own path, that's probably why I'm so adamant in breaking people free of that, to actually be so intentional with what they're doing. But in terms of what our actual purpose is here, um,
And
I don't
I don't
know.
even think you can ever answer that question, right?
No,
Like,
you
I think
can't.
it's subjective to every individual, right? I'm just curious to like, I kind of like to push the envelope a little bit with people, right? Like, and seeing and hearing like their answers to certain questions that they're unanswerable, really. I mean,
Well, maybe everyone's purpose is different. And maybe there's not just one answer to purpose. And maybe it's, I mean, when I figured out sort of, I said earlier, like I feel like uh, my purpose, whether it's my purpose for being on this earth or whether it's my purpose, my sense of purpose with my career, um, I feel is I feel fulfilled in my purpose by empowering other people. When I can give someone that light bulb, that aha moment, that, oh shit, I never thought about it that way before, or like, and all of a sudden I'm opening a door for them or shining a light on something that all of a sudden they're seeing possibilities that they didn't realize were in their grasp, or that were in their that were possible for them. And I love that because I've now opened a whole world of opportunities, and they can then choose. You know, when people suddenly realize what they could be capable of, doesn't mean, like, I want people to discover what they're capable of or acknowledge what they're capable of. But I also very strongly feel just because you can doesn't mean you should. So I don't want people to get to the next level of their business just because they can get to the next level of their business. I want people to get to the next level of fulfillment. And then if that means stepping down from their business and finding some other passion in gardening or in something else, that's what I want for them. I want fulfillment. I want them to feel like, whether that's achieving a sense of purpose, whether that is, you know, the amount of charity they work because they feel like they are giving back, or whatever that is, that's what I want for people. It's not always getting the higher status, the higher level of success, material, outward material definition of success. Um, because that's when people get to those, the end of their life, and that's where they have a lot of those questions and regrets and wishing they had done more of this and less of this, and, you know, yada yada yada. And if we can hone in on that earlier and do more of the things we love and that we enjoy and that bring us a sense of purpose and passion, which can be in our work, then there are less regrets down the road. So
regrets. So another question, right? Like, so that's you help you help people find their fulfillment, right? Is that fulfillment for you, right? Like, is
yeah,
that really that brings fulfillment to you, and helping others achieve their goals and seeing that? um
when someone either hears me speak or reads my book or hears me, you know, in a podcast or something, and they say something that I said resonated with them so much and it changed the way they thought of something, and then they went and tried something that they never would have done before because of, like, how, whatever the outcome is, it's almost irrelevant. The fact that they tried something that they were blocking themselves from trying before, that to me is so, like, sometimes it's actually emotional. Like, I'm so happy, like I'm just so happy for that person because they have broken down a barrier. They have now gone into this world where they can they're allowing themselves to discover what's possible for them. And that to
mhm.
me is so rewarding. And wherever they take that, or whether they get coaching to help them go through that, whether they do it on their own, whatever it is, it doesn't matter to me. I just am, that is a very rewarding feeling for me. And maybe that's selfish a little bit because then I feel like I'm, you know, good at what I do. I don't know what it is, but I love when I get that feedback that something that I have said or done or posted or written, that changed the way they looked at something, and therefore they did this that they never would have done. That's gold for me. Like, that's rewarding.
I see what you did there.
Did you see
That's
that?
gold for you. I love that. What's next? Like, what's for you, right? Like, is there, this is fulfilling for you, and that's amazing. I
Mhm.
don't think a lot of people find that. For me, it's freedom, right? But I feel like we find freedom. Um, I don't think there's anything external that's going to make us free, right? Like I feel like it's being able to come home to yourself. And the one thing I have learned is like a lot of the trauma, a lot of the anxieties and neuroses that we experience is because we're trying to run away from something, right? We
Mhm.
can we can program ourselves to like avoid something just because it takes away that an anxiety. You see that a lot in OCD tendencies and symptoms, but you can't escape it ultimately unless you confront it, right? Like a lot of popular therapies and modalities like EMDR, right? Like is really good for exposure uh, to that, right? And kind of getting used to that anxiety and like seeing, healing that through different ways. But I feel like ultimately, like you have to surrender to the body, and you have definitely put your body through some rigorous trainings, right? Like, have you ever felt like present in your own body, like in these extreme events in your life, right? Like going to Antarctica, training for the Olympics, training for rugby. Like, have you ever pushed that boundary of like your breaking point, right? I guess you got to continuously do that. But like, was there ever a moment where you felt like you couldn't push any further, and how did you overcome that?
I would say, I mean, there are exhausting trainings for rugby for sure with endurance, and I'm not an endurance person at all. So it's actually extremely probably more painful than most people training for endurance. But um, I've recovered from a couple of hip surgeries. So some of those were, I would say patience was harder than pain sometimes. Um, as an athlete, and you want to get going, and you know that almost, uh, yeah, you if you do, you're more apt to screw something up than help you advance. So you have to, it's like that patience of coming back. I would say probably one of the most physically and mentally challenging things I've ever done was climbing that highest mountain in Antarctica. And I think it's because I do not do well in the cold. Like I do not do well in the cold. And when you are trudging for hours in the freezing, like in ridiculous cold, um, I actually took some lessons away from this that I didn't realize that I needed. But um, I realized that I can. So a couple of things. There's once where I almost wanted to give up, like to stop, because it was so cold. The wind was so whipping. I was exhausted. I was, and then for me, the thing that pulled me around was I am very uncomfortable right now, like painfully uncomfortable. But our body usually, our mind often tells us that we're at the quitting point before our bodies actually are at the quitting point. And my biggest thing is having no regrets. So I said, as soon as I have the option, I have the choice right now. I have the choice. They're telling a few people, like, you can turn around now. We'll take you back to high camp because you didn't summit. Like, if you don't summit, and that was our one chance to summit. And they said it was awful. Like wind was whipping at minus 50. Some people thought it was minus 60, but whatever. But this is degrees Celsius. So I have no idea what in Fahrenheit it is. Ridiculously, my hair was frozen in icicles in the front of my face. Like it looked like a beard. It was ridiculous. Anyway, so I basically said probably minutes after I get to high camp, it'll be the relief of being back in camp, not being in the wind, whatever. And not being exhausted anymore, getting a tiny little break. I probably would be able to keep going. I'd probably be like, oh, I should have kept going because I'm fine. I'm actually okay. So I was just like, I do not want that. I don't want to get like, if I'm going back to high camp early, I'm going back being not able to walk or move anymore. Like That's it, or else I will have regrets. So for me, it was all about having no regrets, and no regrets, like looking at, I think that's the no regrets equals no excuses in my books. And the excuses of, okay, I'm cold, it's too cold out, I'm too tired, I'm too whatever, blah, 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 blah. Those will always be things that you will question later. Like, were those actual, or was your mind playing tricks on you? And it was true. It was like, I mean, that ended up being an 11-hour round trip up to the summit and back. 11 hours in the freezing cold. They almost actually turned us back because the wind was so strong and it was so cold that we were probably about 200 yards from the top, 300 yards from the top. And they almost turned us back because they thought it was too dangerous. So for me, it's just,
I would be so pissed if they did that.
I know a lot of people would have been. But for me, I think the thing that's kept me going is no regrets. Just no regrets equals no excuses. Okay, this really sucks. This is really cold. This is really whatever, but I will have regrets if I turn around, because I know that I'm physically able to do this. Like, I know I am. I also learned something else about myself. It wasn't the high camp, the summiting day. It was another just super long stretch. And it was really cold and really long. And they said it was, probably going to take us about 3 to 3.5 hours. Okay, you mentally, from this point to our rest point. I'm like, okay, so you mentally prepare for that. And then after a while, you're like, okay, it's going on 4 hours. And you're like, how much further do we have? How much longer? And they're like, oh, probably another 20 minutes, 20, 25 minutes. You're like, okay. And then you wrap your head around that. And you're like, okay, another 20, 25 minutes. And then 45 minutes later, you're like, okay now. Like, and then I'm really like, I'm getting angry. I'm like, you need to tell us what the worst case scenario is. And then if we get there, if it's 5 hours, tell us it's going to be 5 friggin' hours. And if it's only 3, great. But if you mentally prepare for 3 and it ends up being pushed to 4 and then pushed to 5 and then pushed to 6, that's when people can't handle it. I think we have the capacity to handle way more, but we need to mentally prepare for things and what those potential worst case scenarios might be. You can know what the ideal, the optimal situation will be, but you have to mentally prepare for that worst case scenario, and then you can dial it back. But the add-on and 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 the add-on, that's for me personally. And for a lot of those other climbers that were on the same trip, we realized that was a thing. That was definitely a thing that people struggle with.
Well, during those moments, right? And especially when you're in the middle of like a competition or trekking up the mountain, have you ever experienced like flow states?
Flow states? Oh, yeah. I mean, I never really called it flow. Like, I guess I heard about flow state after I'd already experienced it. So you don't try to get into this flow state. You just, well, I mean, I guess if you're trying to, you kind of put yourself in the position, you do the steps that it takes to get you into that space where you're ready to perform. But like, there are parts where things just go in slow motion. Like, I don't know whether people have different definitions of flow state or whatever, but I mean, it's when you are so in the moment, things can kind of slow down a little bit. And sometimes they seem so slow that at the end, like for bobsledding, for example, I will get to the end and I'll be like, oh my gosh, that felt so like that must have been an awful start. And we just broke a start record or something. Like, so you don't necessarily know you're in it, but everything else falls away. Like the crowd falls away. You're there, you're literally there just executing all the different steps that have to happen in order for your desired outcome to happen, but you're not focused on that desired outcome anymore. You're literally focused on just the steps. And that, I think, is the key to not just getting in this flow state, but just to achieving any goals that people have for themselves, right? We focus so much on this goal, this binary outcome of success or failure, when really we should be looking at these goals and setting really huge goals and looking at it more like a spectrum, like, because it also disempowers the naysayers and re-empowers you. And it's just like, you know what? Yeah, I might not get there because it's a really big freaking goal, but I might not get there, but I'm really excited just to see how close I can get. And then it kind of gamifies it. It makes you more solution minded. It helps you start thinking outside the box of different ways to do it, because it's not this like success failure target anymore. It's a challenge that you're challenging yourself to see if you can overcome this and get to this. And then something else comes up. Okay, well, how can I get around this now? You end up gamifying it and working your way up, and you get way further up the spectrum when you look at it that way than you do if you're just setting small goals that you either know are achievable, or you don't go after them because you think you've set them too high.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, yeah.
Do you ever meditate at all?
I do not meditate in the traditional view of meditation.
Your workouts are your meditation?
No, they are not. I do not enjoy working out.
No?
No. For me, my form of meditation is just being in the moment, usually when I'm outside on my deck. I think people need to unplug. I think people need to disconnect in order to reconnect with, one, their values, but reconnect with their own thoughts and their own values and their own. I think we need to get away from the noise and the judgment and the opinions and values of other people, and to figure that out, which is actually why I'm working right now with someone finalizing a retreat specifically for that. A retreat, travel retreat, experiential, but also unplugging, disconnecting, so that you can actually do the work and figure out what's really important to you and not important to your family, not important to society, not important to whatever, but actually what you really want. So I'm excited. So for me, it's at our family cabin, and there's no Wi-Fi. I mean, we have very little cell service. There's no insulation there. It's just in the woods. There's a deck right on the water. There's no TV there. There's no, like, it is remote, and it is, my grandparents bought it 65 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't changed since, I don't think. It's like stepping into a time capsule. But it's probably one of my favorite places on the planet, because I can watch the birds, the hierarchy of birds when they come to feed at the feeder. And there's a hierarchy that you wouldn't notice unless if you don't put your phone away and if you don't just sit there and watch. And I feed the chipmunks, and they come right up on my lap and feed, chipmunks, and watching the squirrels, and me being in the moment with that stuff. That is my form of recharging.
So do you ever question any of that, right? Like, you ever look back and look at it at a higher level of, like, you look at all the things that you're teaching, you're looking at manifestation, you're looking at breaking programs, healing, right? You're in different altered states of consciousness, right? Like flow states, whether you call it meditation or not, you're in a different state of consciousness when you're out there drinking your tea or coffee in the morning, looking at the chipmunks and the birds. What do you feel, right, when you're on that deck, right? Like inside, internally, like your intrinsic experience of that moment. Like, can you talk about it at all?
I would say it, like, it's going to sound super cliche, but it feels peaceful. But I think if I were to think about, which I've never actually thought about this before, but if I actually stopped to think about what I felt like on the inside, I would
don't even think, just let it come out.
No, but I almost feel like everything on my inside has slowed down. So not just me on the outside, but on the inside. So maybe it's almost like my inside is in a flow state, like I would be when I'm competing or when I'm, on stage speaking, or
Sure.
I don't know, but
on stage speaking, right? Like, a lot of people feel fear around that, but obviously you excel at that, right? Like,
well, I still get nervous. Same as I still got nervous before competing. I still get nervous before speaking. I think it's normal to get nervous because you care about,
it's the unknown, right?
Doing.
You don't know.
Yeah, it's not automatic. I'm not at one of those. There's some speakers who just get up there and it's a canned thing. Like, I don't know. I think when you care, you really get nervous about delivery and about how people are going to receive it. So I'll never say that I'm not nervous about competing or anything like that. But I honestly think that when I'm on that deck, everything on from the inside out slows down.
Yeah, I tell you what I feel, right? Like, is this enormous presence, like of something? There's an underlying something that's going on that
Yeah.
that brings a different perspective, like a different view of how did I get here in this moment, right? Like you think about all the things that had to happen for you to get here, like all the
Mm-hmm.
chance meetings of your parents and your grandparents and their parents, and like all the events that had to unfold for you to be right where you're at. And then you see all of this magnificent beauty and you're sipping this substance and you're just observing and you're getting into this different state of mind and everything slows down and you think about nothing and you're just observing and you're looking at all the wonder and like what makes this whole thing go, right? And looking back at your life, your meaning, right? And just again, it comes down to presence and surrendering to wherever you're at. And for me, it's been a game changer. Is like just being where you are and like fully there. Because like it's been probably the hardest thing for me to like fully be present with someone, right? And resonate with them and
Mm-hmm.
to really connect with them. That's what it's all about is connection. And I mean, you've seen some pretty amazing things in your life, right? Like you've seen people manifest their dreams or their fulfillments and you push past barriers and you achieve goals and you're able to see the beauty that's out there on the deck. But I still question like what is it, right? Like what is it that ties it all together? What's the silver lining, right? It's the beauty, it's the experience. And then like there's always something that's pulling us back to try to achieve something higher, right? Like it's like the ego keeps stepping in and it's like, you got to keep pushing harder, keep pushing forward. You need more, more, more. But I feel like it's like in the now, like right now, that is like the purpose of it all to like
Do you
fall
think
back
though
into
that that
that.
is, do you think that need to go now, like more, 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 is ingrained in us from like, I don't know, way, 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 way back when that was survival to them. Like there's so many of these things that were socialized to achieve or socialized to do or socialized to believe, but we also have some ingrained stuff
Mhm.
that I mean, over God, centuries and centuries where it was survival, where they had to go for hunting, they had to go like do all of these things. There was no break. There was a constant need to continue, like for more, 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 like hustle, hustle, hustle. And I don't know, maybe there's part of that in us too, that we no longer necessarily require that, but that along with the socialization,
Well, I think
I don't know.
there's a big programming taking place when we're young and growing up. Like even gender roles, right? Like of just like what is
Oh,
it to
sure.
be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? Like and the masculine, the feminine, like there's so much socialization that takes place really. And like the go go go, I think it's just our society that is pushing this materialistic agenda and saying that, more is better. I feel like that's why I surrender to the body, surrender to this state of now, and like really find out who you are, and like really concentrate on that, and be curious to like what it is, like what is the awareness behind the eyes, like when you shut them and you shut down the mind, right? When you stop thinking, there is awareness, and there's things that are happening around you that continuously go, like what makes the heart pump, what makes the lungs breathe, right? Like yes, there are mechanisms in the body that make this thing continue, but like what is that, right? And I think it starts with a little bit of curiosity and wonderment and pushing those boundaries of like what society says what life really is, and like diving deeper into the mystery of life. And I think that's for me right now, that's where I'm at, right? And it's manifestation, right? Like your dreams. Like I just always question that too. It's like, what is the dream really, right? Like, is it my dream or is it like somebody else saying, "Hey, man, you need this dream"? I think for freedom for me, it's freedom from emotional reactions from things, right? Like to be able to be in a state where I can see everything happening and be okay with who I am and not really have a reaction, negative or positive to that, but just see it for what it is. It's just a reaction to something, right? Like there's trauma in my body. There are events that have taken place in my life that have created trauma or resistance to certain situations or things or people, and seeing that as my perspective, right? And knowing that I'm having a reaction to something that you said to me from probably something in my life, right, that has happened. And
Mhm.
then having that mindset to go in and dive deeper into it and say, all right, what was that? Right. And then heal that, and then heal the next thing, and the next thing, the next thing. And then like, where does that take me? I don't even know where I was going with that rabbit hole, but it's just like, it felt good, and like, I see you, right? Like I see what you've done in this life. And I just want to be fully present with you and like connect with you on a whole different level and be vulnerable and like authentic. And I think it's great what you're doing, and like being able to speak up in front of all those people and like serve. I think that's awesome. No way am I undermining what you're doing. I'm celebrating what you're doing, right? And being more curious about what it is that you're here to do and what more you have to offer, right? Because I feel like we all have more to offer. We just need to be curious to find it. If any of that makes sense.
I agree. I think we do have so much more to offer. Um, and I just, like I said, I think we're capable of way more than we give ourselves credit for. Um, but while we're figuring that out, we also need to keep in mind my little tidbit of just because you can doesn't mean you should. So it's nice. I think that's where that discernment is coming from. Like you just admitting, someone saying, oh, if someone tells you, oh, you'd be so good at this, you should do this, or, you should definitely pursue this or whatever. And you finding the freedom of being able to say, okay, well, yeah, I would be good at that, but I don't need to do that to feel like to feel successful or to feel fulfilled. And I also I don't want to do that. Like to acknowledge the fact that it's not something that you necessarily are passionate about and want to do. And I do think that that is a freedom, that is a breaking free of the expectations and the values and the opinions of other people and of society that allows us to truly be free. Like that is the feeling of freedom, and free to be yourself and free to be able to do what I don't know, what truly brings you joy.
Hmm. You
Yeah.
just won another gold medal.
I
You got 3.
have 3.
Heather, this has been awesome. I
Trey,
feel
it's
like
been
we were in
perfect.
flow together. I feel like this is the time has gone by so fast.
It's over.
I
What?
know. How can people reach you? How can they find you?
Yeah, well, they can find me on social media, just Heather Moyse, mostly Instagram, Facebook a little bit, but if they want to get access for anything like coaching or speaking or anything like that, then they can go to my website. My book, any way they want to get my book, they can find on my website too. Audiobook, hardcover, if they want to gift it to someone, or if they order the hardcover through my website, I can sign it and personalize it before it goes out, which is always kind of fun. But otherwise, they can get soft cover or Kindle on Amazon and, all the normal places. But generally, Heather Moyse, heathermoyse.com or Heather Moyse on my handles. And if you forget my last name, anyone can just Google Heather Bobsleigh Canada, and I'll probably come up somewhere.
Awesome. Well, Heather, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been awesome.
Well, thanks for having me on. This has been great.